Most people imagine a 5,000 crore empire as something glamorous. Private jets, glass offices, luxury cars lined up in a quiet parking garage. But if you step inside one of these empires, the first thing you notice is not glamour, it's pressure. Constant pressure. Phones ringing at 2 a.m., deals collapsing without warning, competitors quietly trying to destroy you. And the strange part? Many of the people running these businesses didn't start with genius ideas. They started with something far simpler, a very different way of thinking about money. Because building a crore empire is not just about intelligence or hard work. Millions of people work hard, but only a tiny fraction ever builds something worth thousands of crores. So the real question isn't how rich are billionaires. The real question is, what do they see in the world that most people completely miss? To understand that, imagine two people standing in the same city. They walk down the same street. They see the same shops, the same buildings, the same traffic, but their minds process the scene very differently. One person sees places to spend money, restaurants, cars, clothes, status. The other person sees something else entirely, assets, cash flow, market gaps, hidden demand, where most people see consumption. Billionaires see systems, and systems are where the real money lives. Let's take a simple example. Imagine a coffee shop. Most customers walk in thinking about a Rs 200 cappuccino, but the owner of that coffee chain is thinking about something very different. He's thinking about location economics, foot traffic, lease negotiations, supply chains, margins on each cup, and most importantly, scale. Because selling one coffee is a small business. Selling 10 million coffees a month becomes an empire. This shift in thinking is subtle, but it changes everything. The middle class often focuses on income, salary increases, bonuses, side hustles. Billionaires focus on leverage, not working harder, but making each decision produce more results. Think about the math for a second. If someone earns Rs 10 lakh a year from a salary, doubling their income requires a promotion or a better job. Both difficult. But if someone owns a business making Rs 10 lakh in profit, they don't just think about working more hours. They think about scaling the system. More customers, better margins, new markets. Suddenly Rs 10 lakh becomes Rs 1 crore, then Rs 50 crore, then Rs 5,000 crore. Not because the founder worked 500 times harder, but because the system multiplied. This is the first brutal truth about billionaire thinking. They don't focus on effort, they focus on structure. Structure determines outcomes, and structure is invisible to most people. Now here's where things get uncomfortable, because building something worth crore usually requires decisions most people would never make. Risk, real risk. Not the kind people talk about on social media. Actual financial danger. Imagine borrowing a 10 crore to expand a factory. If the expansion fails, the debt doesn't disappear. Banks still want their money. Employees still expect salaries. Suppliers still expect payment. Many billionaires have lived through moments where one bad quarter could destroy everything. You don't hear those stories often, because failure rarely makes headlines. But behind many successful empires is a quiet timeline filled with near collapse. Delayed salaries, investor panic, legal battles. One wrong policy change from the government. One global crisis. One supply chain breakdown. Suddenly the empire looks fragile. This is the second brutal truth. The bigger the business becomes, the more fragile it actually is. Our crore company might depend on dozens of variables working perfectly. Raw material costs, interest rates, currency fluctuations, consumer demand, government regulation. One change in any of these can wipe out years of profit, which explains something strange about many billionaires. They often appear calm, but their thinking is constantly defensive. Protect the system, strengthen the system, expand the system, because the empire must survive shocks. Now here's another truth that rarely gets discussed. Timing. Timing plays a terrifyingly large role in massive wealth. Take India's economic timeline. In the 1990s, liberalization opened markets. Suddenly, private companies had opportunities that simply didn't exist before. Telecom, IT services, infrastructure, finance. Entrepreneurs who entered these sectors early built enormous fortunes, not because they predicted everything perfectly, but because they were positioned correctly when the economy expanded. The same thing happened with technology companies in the 2000s and with digital platforms in the 2010s. Economic waves create massive opportunities. A man wakes up at 6:30 in the morning. His alarm rings. He sighs. He checks his bank account. There's money in it. He worked hard for it. 40 hours this week, maybe more. Overtime last Thursday. A late meeting on Friday. He feels responsible, productive, stable. This is what being financially responsible looks like, right? Now imagine another person waking up at the exact same moment. No alarm, no commute, no boss. But when they check their bank account, Money appeared there too, not because they worked yesterday, because something they own worked for them. A building collected rent, a stock paid a dividend, a fund grew quietly overnight. Two people woke up at the same time. One traded hours for money, the other owned something that produced money. And that difference seems small at first, but over 20 or 30 years, it becomes one of the most powerful financial divides in modern society. Not intelligence, not effort, not education, mindset. Specifically, the middle-class mindset. A mindset that quietly trains millions of people to work for money, while the wealthy focus on buying things that make money. And the strange part? Most people never notice the difference until it's too late. Because the system that creates this divide is subtle. It doesn't look like a trap. It looks like responsibility. It starts when you're young. You're told a simple formula for success. Study hard, get good grades, find a stable job, work hard, save money. This advice isn't evil. In fact, it's practical. But something is missing from the equation. You're taught how to earn money, but almost never how money itself works. School rarely explains the difference between income and assets, or how the financial system rewards ownership far more than labor. So people graduate understanding how to write essays, but not how capital grows. And that gap matters, because the modern economy runs on assets, not paychecks. Let's start with a simple idea. There are two ways money can come into your life. You can work for it, or you can own something that produces it. That's it. That's the entire system. Working creates income. Ownership creates wealth. The middle class is trained almost entirely around the first one. Work harder, work longer, climb the ladder, negotiate raises, save carefully. The wealthy focus on the second. Acquire assets. Let them produce income. Buy more assets. Repeat. And over time, the gap between these two approaches compounds in ways that are almost invisible at first, but enormous later. To understand why, we need to look at a quiet but powerful piece of math. Compounding. Compounding is the process where money grows, and then the growth itself starts producing more growth. Imagine you save $10,000. If it earns 7% a year, after 1 year you have $10,700. Not very exciting, but the next year, the growth happens on the new total. Then again, and again. 30 years later, that same 10,000 becomes more than 70,000, without additional work. That's the magic of compounding. But here's the uncomfortable twist. Compounding works far better with assets than with labor. Your salary does not compound in the same way. Raises are usually small, maybe 3%, maybe 5% if you're lucky. And many people reset their finances every year with expenses. Rent increases, car payments, lifestyle upgrades, which means the salary growth rarely builds unstoppable momentum. Assets do. A rental property collects rent every month. Stocks can pay dividends and rise in value. Businesses reinvest profits and expand. And the wealthiest individuals on earth rarely rely on salaries. Look at the numbers. According to U.S. tax data, the majority of income for the ultra-wealthy comes from capital gains, dividends, and business ownership, not wages. Even CEOs often receive far more wealth from stock ownership than from their official salary. So while millions of workers compete for raises, asset owners watch their holdings quietly multiply. But if this is so powerful, why doesn't everyone just buy assets? Because the middle-class mindset encourages spending patterns that delay asset ownership. Let's walk through a common financial timeline. Someone graduates college at 22. They find a job. Maybe their salary is $50,000. The first instinct is stability. Rent a nicer apartment. Buy a reliable car. Upgrade the phone. Nothing unreasonable. Then the promotions come. Income rises to $70,000. Maybe $80,000. Life improves. Bigger apartment. Better car. Vacations. Still responsible. Still saving a little. But something subtle has happened. Income increased. Expenses followed. Financial pressure remained roughly the same. Economists call this lifestyle inflation. When earnings grow, spending quietly grows alongside it.